Good morning,
Wow,
Rob.
a rare Wednesday episode, and Demetrius is here. He must be really failing at his business. He must really be needing the support. So Demetrius, why don't you tell everybody how they can give you all their money?
Yeah, well, thanks for that. Things are going really well. Actually, I've got a student coming in this evening from California. I have to double check. Anyway, he it's going good. I do 3-day boot camps. People come into my place, they fly into Minneapolis, I pick them up at the airport, and then we train pool for 3 days. And it's darn incredible what happens over 3 days. And there's many types of videos available online and different kinds of Zoom lessons, but spending 3 days side by side with somebody that can play pretty well, and then just as we go through, of course, we have objectives and skills we're building and overall stuff, but then it's all the little stuff about just like, here's how I run these 4 balls. Now you get up and run these 4 balls, and we're working on whether it's the rhythm and the pre-shot and how we're dropping on the balls, or just the tempo of the stroke, or just my last student was real like quick, jittery, fast. Like it seemed like really rushed and frantic, and it's like he's just so smooth and calm, and everything cues moving slower, his tips more accurate, and of course we built a lot of skills and worked on patterns and started building good runouts. But there's other transformations that take place they don't even know about. So anyway, it's a great experience for aspiring great pool players. I've got information on my website, which is mnpoolbootcamp.com. MN is for Minnesota, so Minnesota Pool Bootcamp. It's mnpoolbootcamp.com. And things are going well enough. I just added a calendar, so I've got my pricing information there on my webpage, and I've got a calendar showing my next available as well as some availability, so that you can get I don't like those little submission forms where you have to type in your name and send an email out and hope that somebody gets back to you before you find out what's going on. I've got everything right there on pricing and availability. So check it out, and maybe we can meet up someday.
Pretty fun. We'll give a shout out to Nick DeLeon. We got to hang out quite a bit at the Super Billiards Expo. Congratulations on. Actually, Nick's been playing really good lately. I think he's, if I'm not mistaken, I think he's 4th overall right now in the standings, which I suppose we'll have to talk about that a little bit too. It's crazy to think there are 46 Americans that are ranked higher money-wise right now than Sky Woodward. Anybody want to talk about that?
Wow.
That is temporary. I think we can call that temporary. I think
probably.
Yeah, it's definitely early on still, and he's not playing the events. What can you do?
So many. You've seen it. You've seen it there with the World Championships. You've got quite a few big events. Quarterfinal, you shoot up that leaderboard into the top 10 just by hitting a quarterfinal. Now there's so much money in these big events, so it's very early, very early.
Well, I think it's kind of crazy that at the end of the day, the U.S. side of things, I think Nick is at a couple $1,000, like $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 or something like that, and he's 4th. And the European side of things, looks a little bit different. So,
yeah, again, it's early. It's so early. You've got the world. Don't moan. You've got the world champion. World champion is an American. It's been a while.
Yeah.
Feels really good. Exciting.
Feels good.
Yeah, feels good.
Right.
Well, I guess
shout out to you, Nate, for the tremendous job I think you did commentating the NBA.
NBL.
At NBL out there. 3 days steady. You're pretty much in the booth almost all the time, and you were extremely entertaining. I got to tell you. And
thanks, buddy.
And you weren't afraid to stick your neck out and make assumptions in the middle of the racks and things. And I thought that was kind of cool, even though you weren't right all the time. It didn't seem to matter. Just went ahead and did your best that you could. Pretty fun to listen to you.
Thanks, buddy. How much did you listen? How much did you watch?
I watched a lot. I actually did. Yeah. I paid my $5.
Cool.
To watch
I think it was pretty.
Play. I paid $5. That's amazing for me to do that. That's for sure.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty awesome actually, and then an amateur ends up winning it. Del Sim, congratulations.
How did he play? Yeah,
that's pretty impressive stuff. When you're getting into the box and playing with some of the best players, he beat I mean, he beat Thorsten Holman in the finals. I mean,
And
how
I thought
strong is that?
Thorsten was going to crush him there after that first set. I mean, he was just on fire.
Yeah, I think he beat him 9-2, 9-3 in the first set.
He did. He crushed him.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty fun stuff.
Good. And Jeremy Fedkenhauer, I'm going to give a shout out to him from Wisconsin for as well as he played. I've never seen him play that well.
Well, I'll tell you what, his best game is big table 8-ball by far. And to be honest, like he had BJ Ushery down 6-1 in a race to 8. And if he would have won that match, if he would have got that done, he would have been playing Al LaPena for the to get to the hill, which is another amateur player who made it deep into the event. So how awesome would it be to see a Wisconsin guy guaranteed 5th, 6th at that point playing an amateur?
Right. Yeah. His cue ball control was pretty awesome. The speed, I think Jeremy liked the speed of those tables. He was feeling it pretty good.
Well, here, how does this sound? Del Sim beats Kenny Tran, an amateur. Then he beats Jayson Lynch, who played as a professional, but he's not a professional. But he's mostly a trick shot guy is what he's known for. And then he beats John Mora 8-4. Shane Alba, player from Ohio, 8-5. Beats Al LaPena 8-6. Loses 8-2 to Thorsten Holman, and then beats Thorsten Holman 6-3. I mean, Del Sim, congratulations, man. That's super awesome. And an amateur wins this event. Of course, the idea of this event is you get as an amateur, you get to get into the box with professional players, and you get to try your hand at basically a free roll once you win one of these qualifiers to take on one of the pros. I mean, I guess Demetrius, let's ask you about this because you're a pro player, but you're not like an elite pro player. Some of these players are 720-ish range, and they'd be playing against you as a pro right around 740-ish. What do you think about the idea of this as a farm system?
Yeah, so it's tricky because some people know all about the NBL, other people haven't heard of it. So in short, though, what they do is they try to have a mix where you've got half top amateur, half competitive tournament amateur players and half tournament professional players. And so the way it works is the professional players can buy into the event for $1,000 entry, whereas the amateur players can play qualifiers and win the entry so that if they win the qualifier tournament, they get to play then where they're playing. And then on top of that, don't they split the brackets where it's like 8 pros on one side and 8 amateurs on the other? And that something like that.
So what they do is every amateur will draw another amateur, and every pro will draw another pro. So no matter what the first round,
reverse seeded the first round. That way, so not only are you giving the amateurs a chance to compete with these pros without having to come $1,000 out of pocket, but they're actually kind of guaranteed the first round that they have a competitive chance. Now, what's great about that is that amateurs can then get a chance to play with better players and even win money because you're in for 100. And if you win the qualifier, now you get to play an amateur. Maybe you win an amateur match your first round. Next thing you know, I don't remember the payout structure, but how much did these amateur players, just as an example in this field, how many amateurs hit the cash in this field?
So this is the crazy thing is I don't think it has the strongest pros that it could have had, of course, but as far as like top amateurs or top pros, they still had Thorsten Holman, they had John Mora. They had BJ Ushery, who's a great player as well. They had Earl Strickland. Let's see, who else am I missing here?
And those were the top pros. We had an amateur win, and then what other places did they take that was in the money?
So Thorsten Holman took second. Past that, Al LaPena got who's a Filipino. I think he's not a pro, but he's pretty good. He got third. John Mora got fourth. BJ Ushery and Shane Alba got fifth, sixth. And you want to talk about a strong draw? Let me tell you about Shane Alba. Man, this is crazy. He beat he beat his first round in amateur 5-6. So he won on the hill 6-5, and then he beat Earl Strickland 8-5, and then he beat Justin Martin 8-1, and then he lost to Del Sim. And then he lost 6-4 to Thorsten Holman. He beat Justin Martin 8-1. Justin Martin is playing really good pool right now. I'll tell you, I mean.
So what did he win? What did Sean? So because I don't know so he took 5th, 6th, or what place did he take?
Sean Alba took 5th, 6th. So
And what did that pay
so
out?
those. So let me see if
I would love to know what
payouts
first
on-
and fifth, sixth paid out, because while you're looking that up, I'll
So
say
first place took 10,000.
Yep.
So that was amateur. Alapena took 4,000 for 3rd and amateur, and then Shane Alba took 1,500 for 5th, 6th.
and all
And
these
then
guys
Lucas,
were sorry.
and then Lucas Fracassa Werner, who played as a pro, but he's an amateur. He's playing really good pool right now, I'll tell you what. And then Dennis Spears also played as a pro. They got 7th, 8th. And then at 9th through 12th, Brett Ross, Jeremy Fedkenhauer, and Frankie Hernandez, and Jeremy Fedkenhauer were the amateurs that took money. Justin Martin and Frankie Hernandez were.
So they paid out 9th through 12th, so they got in the money as well. So and
Out
they
of
and what are
28,
they
28 players.
and what are
29
they?
players, sorry.
Okay, gotcha. So I mean, the bottom line is that they're in for $100 and they're pulling out 4 figures, and
150.
whether, of course,
150.
yeah. Oh, they're in for 150. Okay, so I mean, it's
Yep.
they're in for next to nothing to have a chance to win. Whether it's 1,500 or 3,000 or 10,000, and on top of that, they're getting a chance to play top players for money on almost what's a free roll, where there's not a ton of expectation or financial pressure. I've talked about it a million times. There's you have to, especially for these players that are, I really believe that once you're in that like 640 plus range, people talk about what does it take to get to 700. I think that you can, players that are 400, 500, 550, even 600, I think you can improve your game in your basement. I think you can technically improve your game doing drills, working on your stroke, working on your pocketing, working on your patterns. I think you can practice your way to a point. But once you're in that mid 600 range, you want to know what it takes to get to 700. It takes competition with great players that are pushing you, punishing you for mistakes, getting you mentally tough, getting your strength of fighting and grappling and moving and just coming with stuff. It just takes, you can't make a sword without, heating it up to where you can, shape it. And it takes the heat of competition against great players. And here's a chance for these amateur, top amateur players to get that opportunity for next to nothing and have a competitive chance to win. I think it's one of the best things. We talk about Matchroom, Predator, all the great things. That's great for the top elite pros. When it comes to amateurs and regional players, I haven't seen anything better come for pool than the NBL in my lifetime. That's what I'll say.
I got to agree with that 100%.
Yeah. So there was 29 total players. They paid out $30,000. 16,500 of it was won by amateurs. So over half of the prize fund was won by amateurs.
What a beautiful thing.
So then, if they're for people that are listening, I guess my questions to you all is, of course, how can they get into how do they get signed up for this? And there is there are qualifiers in the area. Where do they find out? But then the other question I have is, what level do you guys think would be a good level to start entering and competing in these? Like what Fargo level? I mean, if you're a 500, you're probably not going to win a qualifier, much less get far in this thing. Like what level would you think that you're ready to go fight for one of these?
600 or higher.
Yeah, I would say 600. I mean, at the end of the day, so I don't know how things are for the rest of the people around the country, but I've complained about this several times on the podcast. I'm a 670 Fargo, and there's nothing for me in Wisconsin, really. At the end of the day, I can play in probably one event a month at the most. Really, it comes down to, do I want to travel 4 hours? And BJ Usheri, we went out to dinner while we were there, and he was telling us about what he does for events. And he said that he plays every single weekend, and he will travel up to 6 to 7 hours in a car every single weekend to play these regional events, whether it's, driving to Virginia, driving to Florida, Mississippi, wherever it is. He'll jump in his car every single weekend. He'll drive 6 to 7 hours. I don't want to do that. I do not want to sit in my car for 6 to 7 hours one way every single weekend. At the end of the day, that's probably what it would have to take for me to be able to play an event every weekend. So if I can't play an event every weekend, or even, maybe once a month, what am I still playing pool for? Well, if it's to play in a bunch of regional events once every 5 weeks and, try to get better that way, it just doesn't really work, right? So there's got to be some sort of a vision that I can look forward to continue motivating myself to want to play. And I mean, these events are really good for it. I mean, they're a constant chance twice a year. At this point, they're trying to get it up to quarterly, so they're 4 times a year. where they're going to have 2 qualifiers and 1 main event. And that alone, I mean, if they're able to do that, we're looking at 2 qualifiers plus 1 main event every quarter for a total of 12 events, just NBL for players like me, 600 to 700, where, maybe most of your area is 600 and under Fargos, or, something down below, whether it's 550, 520, 480, whatever it is, you're excluded from most of your pool. This is like 12 times a year where you can actually get into the ring, test your skills, figure out how to get better at the game, and continue motivating yourself to want to get better at the game. I think it's a godsend for players that, 600 to 700 or 720 really, where, if your area is getting away from allowing you to want or be able to play in events that, gives you something. But I think, to answer your question, I don't think there's any specific cutoff where like you're 585, so you're wasting your time to get into these things. At the end of the day, if you can afford the 150 and you want to test your skills, I don't care if you're 380. I mean, the only way to get better quick is to constantly test yourself against better players and put yourself in those situations where you're playing against a 700, even if you are a 400 and you're drawing dead. Just giving yourself the opportunity to try it.
I disagree slightly there. I think, yes, if you want to get better, you should play against players that are better than you, but you shouldn't be stretching it out too far. You shouldn't be playing as a 500. You shouldn't be playing against 700s, because you're just not going to get to the table. You're not really going to learn anything. You might as well just watch them on YouTube. You want to be constantly seeking somebody who's 30, 40 points above you. And once you start to get to them, then you get to the next one who's another 30, 40 points above. Don't go as a 500 looking for 700s to play against. They're not going to get you anywhere. It's
not exclusive.
You're going to get frustrated. You're going to get too much of a beat down, and you're going to give up. You want to be able to see some progression in your game, and not by picking people who are just a little bit better than you. Wait until you're better than them, then get the next one, and keep pushing. Go up the ladder.
I don't know. Not exclusively though. Like you can throw in a 700 from time to time. What's it going to hurt? Constantly maintaining a vision of where you're trying to get to is important too, I think.
Yeah, I think you can stretch too far.
I think that there's some truth in what Jim's saying. I would think that the number is a little bit bigger than a 30, 40 point gap. They say 100-point gap dictates a 2-to-1 score margin. So if a 500 played a 600, in theory, they're going to win 33% of the games. And I think that that's enough games to where you're not blowing out of matches. And then the beautiful part is a lot of times when somebody plays somebody 100 points stronger than them, because they're losing the majority of the games, then they start feeling frustrated, discouraged, iced, not confident. And then they start losing a lot of the games, and maybe they're only winning 15% of the games or 10 or 20%. And all of a sudden, but they're getting opportunities to where that if they rally and play well and regroup, they can win 30, 40% at times and maybe split games for a while. So I think that 100-point is still a reasonable, where it puts a lot of pressure and mental duress on the weaker player, but not to the point where they can't cope. But Jim's right. There's a point at which it becomes so lopsided, it's no longer a contest, and it's not healthy competition. But I Howard Victory always said you got to play players similar speed to learn how to fight. Better players to learn how to get improved, and then worse players to learn how to win. You got to play a mix where you're competitive, where it's a little bit of a stretch, and you don't just want to play players where you never see the table. Yeah.
I can accept that. So there's a question.
My idea. Oh, go ahead. Nate, I'm sorry.
Well, I'm about to change the subject with one of the questions. So if you want to expand, go on.
I'll just say that for me, if you're going to play the NBL qualifier, I would think that if you're 580 plus, maybe even 560 plus, play the qualifier. Just go play. Just play. Get the competition. Give yourself a shot. As far as what level do I think you need to be at to have a chance of winning matches and maybe cashing in these events? I would think that once you're 620 plus, Nate's at 600, Rob's at 600. I don't disagree. I've played, I would be a pro in that thing, and I would tell you I've played many players that are, that have taken sets off me that are in the lower to middle sixes. It's everybody that starts with a 6 is a heck of a player and should be competing.
Sure, I agree. Especially if you still have a vision of getting better at the game, and testing your skills. So, question out there is how close is Dell from being a pro player? Well, coming into this event, I believe he was a 695 is what he was coming into this. Now
he broke 700 for the first time.
He broke, yeah. So the first time in his career ever, he broke 700 by winning this event. I think his Fargo went up 7 points or something like that, maybe even more. Let me actually get that. I remember seeing a post that
basically beating Torsten, put him over the 700. Yeah,
right.
What a lifetime memory for that. I mean, that might be his career moment. Like looking back, he might get better. I don't know how old he is or what his future holds, but I will tell you, if that's got, I mean, winning against Thorsten in the finals for 10 grand, it's a pretty memorable.
I talked to him afterwards. I asked him if this was the highlight of his career so far, and he's like, yeah, undoubtedly. Yeah, he said like no problem at all. Like this was the biggest win he's ever had. I mean, he only plays 20. I mean, whatever you want to say about Fargo, he only played going into that event. He only played 25 points higher than I do. Now, I think he's more battle tested because he's played in bigger events than I have ever played in. But the point is like for all the people who like sit back and look like, well, I'm not that level, blah blah blah. Like he was 25 points for me, and I'm a 100% amateur all day, every day. And I mean, it just shows that if you have the best day of if you have the best weekend of your career, you can beat these players. And the only way that you can do it is by getting out there and playing.
I still believe that my personal opinion is 720 is too low to be called a professional, in my opinion.
In the U.S., it's not, though. In the U.S., it's not.
We have a different level.
That's it. Is Fargo an American system or is it a world system?
Well, 720 is 27. 720 is not what Fargo says starts at a pro. That's what BCA basically considers, and that's what the NBL uses. So that is an American adaptation to a system that exists. That's a worldwide system. Yeah. So if the EPBF wanted to say professional starts at 760, that doesn't invalidate the 720. It just means that that's your adaptation to the system. Yeah. Yeah. So. I mean, I think it's awesome. I mean, good for Del Sim. I love the dude. I hate the dude, but I love the dude. He's a great ambassador. He's just sitting back having fun. You're never. Good luck finding anybody who's gonna have a bad word to say about the guy, unless you don't like UK humor.
No, but and don't underestimate how much of a boost this is going to give the NBL.
Oh yeah,
because that's all the amateurs out there around about the 680 to the 720 are all thinking, I can win one of these now. They're maybe hanging back thinking, is it really worth it? Don't be surprised if they all of a sudden have a massive influx of new players that are going to try and play in the next event because they've seen, Dell snapped one off. I beat him last time I played him last year. I pumped him or whatever. There's going to be a lot of players that are going to take interest and think this might actually be worth playing now. Yeah. So
I hope so. No, I'll have to bring him on the podcast and talk to him.
The NBL now has the 8-ball and then it has the 10-ball, correct? There's two separate tournaments. So two big national tournaments a year, one 8-ball and one 10-ball. Mm-hmm. And how many qualifiers are there in Wisconsin for that?
So I only ran one this time. So unfortunately in Wisconsin, there is nobody that wants to host this thing. The idea is like Wisconsin, most of the places in Wisconsin that have big tables, their vision is not really in pool. So like the Brass Ring in Madison, Wisconsin, the guy who owns it, he's just not interested in promoting pool. He's interested in getting his college students in there that are paying $20 an hour for a table and buying drinks and blah, blah, blah. And I mean, I completely get it. I completely understand. Pool players aren't paying his bills. The ball bangers are. Romines held one of these, and they're not interested in. Again, anybody who's in the Milwaukee area knows that Romines really doesn't want anything to do with pool either. There is the Q Club in Waukesha, but they ended up getting rid of all their tables and bringing in bar boxes. I held this at the Varsity Club, and there was only 5 tables there. There was 7 the first time. Again, bar boxes are paying the bills, so Jeremy West took out 2 of his big tables and put in 2 more bar tables. So there's only 5 tables there, and I ran into a huge issue last time finishing the event because I didn't know he got rid of 2 tables until I actually showed up the morning of. So there's a few other places in Wisconsin that potentially could hold them, but as of right now, like we're struggling to find any place that'll hold one of these things, and until we are able to find like a permanent home where we could do these things.
What does the Carom Room have for big tables?
The Carom Room has 7, but Dave isn't interested in running any events that aren't his own. He has such a success with the events that he runs that he doesn't need to bring anybody else in to do events for him because whenever he runs an event, he gets 96 players for him. So why would he outsource it to somebody else? Is essentially what I was told for him. So,
but why is Barbox so popular? I mean, is it a bit of a is it sort of an ever decreasing circle? You know, if you've got an establishment, you've got a room, you can get more bar boxes in, which means that if people come to play, the likelihood is they're going to have to play in a bar box. Therefore, they just like bar box more, so then they want more bar boxes. Would it not be? Yeah. Why are people choosing to play on it? Is it because it's the only thing they know and the only thing they have accessibility to, or do they really prefer to play bar box than 9-foot?
Demetrius, what do you think?
Yeah, and Ryan asked a similar question about is the lack of 9-foot tables impacting the opportunity? So there's no doubt that we are. In my lifetime, I've seen a huge trend. I started playing pool in the Midwest in the '90s, mid '90s, and it was primarily 9-foot tables, and then they had some bar table tournaments. I think in general, we've seen a movement towards shorter sets, smaller tables, and handicaps. It started with shorter sets first. You know, back in a long time ago, the U.S. Open used to be races to 15, and then it went to 13, then it went to 11. And I still remember the commentators talking about how short a race to 11 felt. And now, early rounds of the U.S. Open are raced to 9. We see, you know, and amateur events, and then we see go from 9-foot to 7-foot right around. It started happening in the late 90s, and by 2000, most of the tournaments went on bar table, and our last big table tournaments were like 05, 06. And next thing you know, it was all bar table. And so now it's all bar table. It's all race to 5. Finally, right around 2010 to 12, everything started going handicap, handicap, handicap. So what do these three things have in common? Is they're all ways to reduce the skill the skill edge from the better players. So that you know, if I played somebody race to 9-foot table, I might win a lot of the matches. But when it starts going to race to 5 on a bar table, I've got an edge, but it's not nearly the same. And now you throw in, you know, a 2-game to 7 spot, and it starts getting even tighter. And then you Fargo cap it and kick out the top level players and have 17 different divisions. So you're a B, A, C player. So you play against these other 3 guys. No, really, it's like you go to it and it's like, so the bottom line is it's pressure to where the more people that feel like they have a chance to win, the more people in theory are going to show up. But you said it's a spiral, Jim. You go down that road too far and you counterfeit the contest and you counterfeit the game. So I've never talked about this because I get to go off. I'll just say, if you're going to do this, I've invented the greatest handicapping system in pool. It is perfect. Nobody can sandbag. Nobody can steal. It's perfectly fair to everybody. You show up, you open up the table so it's free play. Everybody hits balls for fun all day, and you raffle off cash prizes. There, everybody's even. Go ahead. And so but it's for these reasons that I do not compete in Minnesota or Wisconsin anymore. You have not seen me play a tournament here for years. If something broke inside of me, I've also unsubscribed. Anytime on my Facebook feed I see any flyer that has a Fargo cap, a handicap, or anything like that, I just unsubscribe from the group. Boom, I'm done. I don't follow it. I can't even look at it. I just find the whole thing gross. So I'm out. Yep.
Yeah,
yes, I'm with him. I'm with the ball.
Yeah.
Well, I agree with that, but I think there's also I mean, I think the pool rooms and the bars also have a little bit to do with it as well, because I mean, what we saw around that time was like pretty big spikes in like rent, right? So if you have a $5,000 square foot room, and a 5,000 square foot room theoretically could hold, I don't know, let's just throw out random numbers, 20 big tables, but it could hold 24 bar tables. If rent is going up and you need to find ways to create more revenue so that you can pay those rent bills, and you now have 4 new tables that you could start collecting greens fees from. At the end of the day, like if you get to the point where you can't maintain your rent and your electricity and all that good stuff with 20 big tables, you might have to take 4 of them out and put in 5 bar tables. And I think over the course of time that this has happened enough. And of course, you know, at the end of the day, is, you know, if you're going to have a bar with 1 pool table in it, you know, just your little dive bar that has, you know, $3 drinks and 1 pool table, you're not going to have a 9-footer in there. You're going to have a bar table in there. So I think the movement of having all of these bars have 1, maybe 2 pool tables in there, as well as, you know, upping the rent at these different pool rooms, as well as, you know, just bars in general, at the end of the day, like there's going to be a higher profit margin off using bar tables than it will be big tables. And
But you know what though? Here's the
place has
problem.
got to survive.
If you go down that road, that's why a lot of our pool halls, not only have they tore it up, but here's the problem: is they started by tearing out the 9-footers, but now they're tearing out the bar tables. They're putting in, bingo and cornhole, and they're opening, expanding the
Bingo.
bar. So it's like, listen, if you really want to go down that road, what if there was more profit in peeling out the bar tables and putting in a dance club? I mean, the bottom, it's like, do you want a pool hall, or do you want to try to maximize profit and figuring out, who's drinking and how they're going to spend their money? And I guess my problem is you go down that road too far and you do these things like Brian Harmson's saying is, all these divisions and all these things. You go down these roads too far and you create a different culture. So when I was in the 90s, everybody around was like, it was like you get in the battle and and you play tough players and you get better, and there was some pride in your improvement and who you took sets off of and how good you could play at stepping up. So there was a culture of like ambition and competition. And now that culture has changed. Of course, people are still competitive. It's not black and white, but the culture has changed now to where people are like, well, why would I play that tournament? I can't win that, but I can play this event, and that's where I'm going to get the most out of that because I have a chance. And you know what? And there's, to be fair, there's some good points, like we talked about, not overextending your stretch. But I think that the more you create that culture, the more normal it gets to where now people are like, the people that are coming up in handicap bar table era, they think it would be alien to like, well, I don't play 9 foots, and why would I play against top players? And it's like now all of a sudden, I feel like it's like a printing money. It's like short term relief, but it's causing a bigger long term problem, and it's not so easy to turn it around.
Yeah. So before we get into this, I did see 2 people. So I want to give a shout out to Nate Johnson and Bill Asking, because I got to meet these guys at the Super Billiards Expo, and it was awesome. So we'll give a shout out to you guys for partaking in the chat, as well as getting to meet you guys. It was great. So I guess, jumping into this idea, like I am not the type of person who believes that bar box is going to hinder pool play as much as other people do. Because at the end of the day, like obviously a bigger table is going to require a bigger stroke. That's you got to be more. It's going to require you to stay on the good side of balls more often. You're not going to be able to stroke the cue ball around nearly as much like you can recover on a bar table. But those are just different tools that you develop. I think that you can become a professional by playing on bar tables as well as on big tables. Either one of them. They just require different things. And if you get to the point where, let's say you get to about where my level is, let's say a 670 Fargo, by almost exclusively playing on bar tables, which I have, it's not that hard for a player at this caliber to make the switch from a bar table to a big table. It just takes time, and you got to develop those skills. I mean, this is like exactly what you do, Demetrius. I'm sure that you get a bunch of players that are exclusively bar table, and you can tell they're a bar table player within 5 to 10 minutes of having them there. All you got to do is just find those voids and those skills and just start refining them.
I want to hear what Jim has to say about that. What do you think, Jim?
Let's say we go to a 9-foot tournament and it's handicapped. How many racks how many racks am I having to give you based on our Fargos? Mine based on a 9-foot Fargo. Yours is based, you say, on a bar box Fargo. So what's our points difference? About 60 points, maybe?
Yeah, something like that.
So what do you get from me in a race to 10 on 60 points?
I would get probably 2 to 3 games to 7.
Okay. You think that'd be enough? Being my Fargo's based on 9-foot and your Fargo's based on bar box?
Based on one single set? No, but
you'd be getting ripped off. You'd be getting ripped off because your Fargo compared to my Fargo is not.
But what I'm saying is, yes, if you're talking about right now, I'm talking about like refining an entire career based off of it. So Sky Woodward basically built a career off of playing on a bar box and then switched to a big table. Same with Justin Bergman.
Because
to a lesser degree, even Shane Van Boning.
Yes, but these guys are doing it on a professional level. You as an amateur player, like you just said, finding tournaments is very difficult for you. So how is your Fargo ever going to be adjusted based on a 9-foot game if everywhere you go is bar box? You're not going to go and play a US Open. You're not going to go and play the Matchroom events. You're not going to be invited to the World Championships. What tournaments are you going to play where your Fargo could possibly change into a 9-foot Fargo? I call it a 9-foot Fargo. You don't have.
Well, I mean, the same. Well, I'll say this: the same exact. So I'm 30 years old. I'm not trying to go pro anytime soon. I'm having fun with the game, and I play in events every now and then. You know, I'm playing most of the Predator events, the Predator Pro events. I'm gonna end up playing 5 of the 8 of those this year. So, but one person from Wisconsin that's playing every single one of them is Mason Cook. He's 21, 22 years old, and you know, he's making that transition right now. All it takes is a desire, and he's 21, 22 years old, and all he wants to do is be a professional pool player. You actively have to choose to take part in 7-foot tournaments. You don't have to choose to take part in 9-foot tournaments.
Okay, I go back to this. He actively wants to be a professional pool player.
Sure.
He better start playing 9-foot.
He is exclusively.
Yeah, your initial comment was you could be a professional player playing mainly only bar box. No, at a certain stage you have to play 9-foot.
No. I'm saying,
what's the biggest tournament you can win on a bar box? What's the biggest tournament?
Jim, you misinterpreted what I said. I said is you could start out being an exclusive bar box player and then make the switch pretty easily. I'm saying, like, once you decide that you want to be a professional player on 9-foot tables, if you're a 650 to 700 player exclusively playing bar box, you can make that switch to the big tables with 6, 7, 8 months worth of just refining the skills that you need to have on a 9-footer.
Based on what you said, what we've just discussed about the situation in the States, Wisconsin being one of those areas, making that switch isn't easy because you don't have access to the tables, you don't have the tournaments.
I think
yes, your ability would dictate that you're good enough to just make that switch and adjust to a bigger table, but you have to be playing on these tables. You have to be playing tournaments week in, week out if you want to take it.
All it takes is buying a pool table, a 9-foot table, and putting it in your
You know
basement.
what? Here's the
sponsorship deal to pay for it all.
You know, there are players in the past. I mean, Buddy Hall grew up playing on a bar table and switched to 9-foot. And of course, it took him years of competing on a 9-foot before he got top flight.
Scott Woodward too, Justin Bergman.
Right, but what I would say is that, you know, and Shane, it's an interesting case. I don't know his percentage of big table play. What I would say is that it depends on what you're trying to do. So, like, for somebody that gets to, like, you know, upper 600s or hits 700 playing mostly bar table, and then they want to challenge themselves and start going to Derby and some other tournaments like that, start playing more like what Mason Cook is doing, you know, playing all big tables and playing a bunch of events. Of course, he's going to acclimate and he's going to be competitive, but is he going to go on and become, you know, competitive at the highest levels? You know, when we look at anyway, it's a tough thing, and so clearly there's similar games. Clearly, you're going to get, you know, but at some point you're going to have to make a switch to be competitive. And then the question is, how soon do you make the switch? And is that going to limit you from getting to the highest levels? For most players, whether or not they can get to 800 or 830 is not really a relevant issue. So I don't know that bar tables are killing the majority. It's like, they're not killing the journey for most players that are just trying to enjoy the game. But the question is it inhibiting our chances of having exactly a world champion? That's really that people can have a meaningful journey.
Sure.
I mean, Eric Zuberbeer says here, with the talent level of the pros nowadays, is the 9-footer necessary? Or if the pool world went to a standard 7 or 8-foot table for all leagues and pros, would that be easier to be all inclusive? Eric, it's only in America. Let's make one thing clear: bar box really doesn't exist anywhere else, as far as I'm aware. You know, so to make it all inclusive, pool is a global sport. And the global sport is 9-foot. So
yeah, there's only a few countries that basically play 7-footers.
Is the bar box harming the chances for world champions? You could argue that perhaps it is. Perhaps it's delaying people's careers. Perhaps it's stopping players from making that switch because they're earning enough on the small table that they don't need to jump to the big table. You know, how many players are you losing because it's still lucrative to be a good amateur or a lower level pro on the bar box?
Yeah,
I mean, all questions that I can't answer. But
I think that's fair. Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah.
All I can do is speculate.
There's a few games that you can play on a bar box that are harder to play than on a 9-footer. I mean, you play 8-ball on a bar box. Sometimes it can be more difficult because the balls are clustered more. On a 9-footer, they're spread out all over the place.
You know what though? Okay, so I'll just say one thing because it's fair. There are individual 8-ball racks that are almost unrunnable. Of course. What I would say is, in general, though, if you told me that I had to break the balls 10 times and I had to see how many I could run out, and I had to run out 5 of them. I had to run out 5 racks off the break without ball in hand. And you got a choice
Right.
between big table 10 ball, big table 9 ball, or bar table 8 ball. I'm taking bar table 8 ball all day. I've got one story because this comes up on Easy Billiards like once every 6 months. Which table is the hardest to play on? Straight pool. And people talk about the 9 foot, the 8 foot, the 7 foot. And there was a lot of people that are always like, oh, 7 foot bar table, it's so congested and blah, blah, blah. Every time I play that game, it's ridiculous numbers. I remember I was at a tournament with a friend of mine, Jesse Engel, and we were warming up, right? He says, I want to hit some balls to warm up. So I said, let's play some Scotch double straight pool on a bar table just to warm up for this bar table event. Our first inning, we Scotch doubled 216. It was like our first inning. Then I just looked at him like, well, okay, I guess we're warm. Like, I think we adjusted. It's like, that's, to me, bar pool is way, 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 way easier in any possible game and variation. Of course, it's easier for your opponents too. So then it's tough. The mistakes are penalized, and it's equally difficult to compete against good players, but the gameplay itself is just totally different.
The only thing I'll say to that, Demetrius, is generally speaking, it depends on, as a generality, you play on Valley bar tables or Diamond or Valley bar tables. And at the end of the day, like, a Valley pocket is like 4.75. It's pretty hard actually to find a 9 foot table with pockets that big. So on top of it being smaller, the pockets are usually a quarter of an inch bigger too. So it kind of, if you're going to be playing if you sync up every single thing to be the exact same except for one's 9 and one's a 7 footer, maybe your argument doesn't quite hold up as well, just because, you know, the pockets aren't quite as big. But at the end of the day, I think I agree with you.
I think distance makes the game tough. Now, I will say one closing thought I've got on this is, I for people that are in the Midwest and that pretty much all their access is bar table, I'm not minimizing the competition and the journey. You could have a meaningful journey, you could have a meaningful game, you could develop a good game of pool. The road, like what I'm talking about, what Jim's saying about, like, can you get to the highest level or could it stunt your career? We're talking about like it would almost be like saying, if you worked for a big company, it's like, well, you can only move up so far in this company because the CEO is never going to retire. Well, for 99.9% of the people, they're never going to be the CEO as long as they can have a meaningful career, move up and pay their bills. It doesn't really matter what the top 0.001%. What I say is that every game, you know, the game's always evolved. So the way when I used to compete bar tables, here's the way I would justify it. It was first played as a lawn game. Then it was indoors on a big table. And then it was using the back of the base to hit the cue ball off the rail. And then it went to a cue. And then it went to leather tips. And then it went to vulcanized rubber. And then it went to bulk line billiards. And then it changed to straight pool continuous pocket billiards in 1908 on a 10-foot table. And then it went to 9-foot straight pool. And then it went to 9-ball when it started becoming the era of road players. And, you know, the economy's going good and gambling is around. It switched to 9-ball gambling game, but it was 2-shot push out. And then when the TV came along, and then they wanted to go to Texas Express, and that was the big change. And then jump cues came out. And then I started playing right there in 1994. And then after that, it changed some more to bar pool or to template racks and other changes. So if I look at that and say for hundreds of years, every single change that occurred was progress and evolution. And then once I started playing, that was perfect. All of history had completed its evolution. Now it's perfect. And then every change since then has been like degeneration or something like that. Like, that's a little bit weird. Like, I look at it like the game evolves, and a champion has to embrace it, develop all their skills, and evolve with it to be competitive in whatever arena. Like, so I don't think there's anything wrong with an evolution of bar pool, believe it or not, at least for some of these things. I'm just talking about why it's happening, what the impact is. Of course, though, I still get my preference that I do prefer 9 foot, and I congratulate those that now have a 9-footer coming into their house.
I want a 9-footer coming into my house.
Got a bigger
Where are you
house.
gonna put it?
Well, I'm going to cut it up into small chunks and just put it in the corner somewhere.
You can buy mine if you want. I'll cut it up into chunks for you. And I'll put a rascal in here.
Yeah. Well, all right. I guess let's use this as a segue to get into the Super Billiards Expo, because I think that what you just said is kind of perfect as far as like the evolution of the sport. And I am going to now make the argument that the Super Billiards Expo needs to be evolved out of the industry. And what I mean by that, okay, so I was there as a vendor. So I was there as a vendor for 2 different things. The onboard sportswear and the white carbon helping out. Yep, exactly. And I heard so many horror stories of that event when it comes to prize money. It's almost nauseating how much money that event has to take in and not give back. So Jim, you look so good.
Good.
The women, for example, there's 166 women with an $80 entry fee. So let's see here. Let's do some math. We have 166 times 80. There's basically over $13,000 worth of entry fees taken in, and they ended up paying out like $8,000. So, I mean, I get the idea that there is stuff needed to, there's got to be greens fees. I get it. You got to make these events happen. It just bothers me, the fact that you're taking $5,000 out of an event, adding nothing, and then saying it's an event for the players. And it just drives me freaking bonkers to think that this is just one event, too, by the way. This is the Open Women's.
So they took 40% straight out of it.
They took 40% almost straight out of the event immediately just for signing up. The men had $33 taken out of every single entry fee, and there was like 900 players in it. There was over 900 players in the Open Men's, I believe, and there was like $32 taken out of it. $30,000 was taken out of the Open Men's division. Are you kidding me? $30,000. Like, you're telling me that it takes maybe there's 200 tables there. You're telling me that it takes $30,000 plus another, $5,000, and that doesn't even count like the team events that were happening. You're telling me that these places are costing you, nearly $50,000 to set up this event. Where's this money going? And like, I think that we're just so used to it. And the women's professional event was advertised $5,000 more than what it ended up being. And this is straight out of like the women's professional. They said that online there was $5,000 that was $5,000 more in payouts. There was one woman less than what a full field was going to be, and there was $5,000 less that was paid out than it was supposed to be. Where's that money going? Plus, you're charging like $10,000 per booth. There's like, there's 50 to 60 booths probably set up, something like that. I think going back to like 2000 and whatever, this is ran by Alan Hopkins. The one thing the players have been whining about their entire careers is that nobody ever takes care of them, right? It's a dog-eat-dog world, and we deserve more as professional pool players. And why are you taking out all this money, and why aren't we getting paid more? They've had so many players unions that have came up based off of the idea of this that ended up just being a disaster for the industry because the players think that they deserve more. And then once your career is done, you go straight out there and do the same exact thing that you've been whining about your entire career. It just drives me nuts. And I'm going to end up getting all the numbers for this because I want to be exactly right when I talk about this further. But there is a lot of money in this event that seems to be unaccounted for.
Well, can you not just ask them to open their accounts?
Oh, I plan on it. I plan on trying to bring one of them on. I just got back from the event yesterday, so I haven't had the exact time to go through and actually account for all of this stuff. But when there's this much money that's missing from this event, and that's just going to be administration fees, whatever they're going to end up calling it, it just seems crazy to think that the player should be subjected to have to deal with this kind of stuff. And, going back to 2006, 2007, whatever it was, when this industry basically fell apart, it became a dog-eat-dog world. And at the end of the day, like, you got to get your own to survive. And I completely understand that. But at the end of the day, like, you just can't do this stuff with all the great things that are going on in this industry with like the NBL, the Predator events, the Matchrooms expansion, all of these amazing events that are going on there that, are actually expanding the industry. All of these little things like this that are basically just quick money grabs. I want to see them gone. Because I think at the end of the day, if this event isn't there, does the industry get hurt at all?
I think you brought up a good point. When you bring up the NBL and Predator, the fact is that it's a market, and that we need, if we want that event to improve or go extinct, then it's not, then it's just we need other people to step up and do things that are more successful. The one thing that the Super Billiard Expo has going is that it's the same place, same time every year, so people can just mentally budget for it, know how it's going to work, know it's going to be, know how it's going to be run, know that the matches are going to go down on time, everything like that. So I think that shows. So any aspiring promoters, it just shows the value of being consistent. So much of pool, tournament directing is just being consistent, predictable, transparent, and that if you can do that over time, people are going to start showing up and playing your events. So I think that, these Predator events and the NBL are still fairly new. Not everybody is into the rhythm of playing them, whereas everybody that's been going to the Billiard Expo, for many, many players, that is their Derby city. They can't maybe compete with the pros at Derby, so they go to these events because they can compete with the open amateur pro-ams or the, whatever. So a lot of people make that their Derby. And I think that you're right, though, that the competition in the industry is what's needed, and we're seeing. And so I think it's going to put a lot of pressure on them.
Rob, Jim, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, we've mentioned this before. Things are changing. Pool is upgrading. And you've got players in there like Predator, Matchroom, NBL. And we talked about it with streaming services, people that are providing streams and stuff like that. It's going to get better and better. Things are getting upgraded. If you don't come along with it, if you stagnate, or if you're not providing a product that's up to standard, you're going to get eaten up in the long run. So, I mean, it's difficult for me to comment on exactly what goes on at the Billiard Expo. But if there is something weird going on, and if it's not legit or whatever, or they are ripping, it'll disappear like anything else. It'll die because there's bigger players that are going to provide something better. There was ranking points that were provided for the Moscone Cup, not for Moscone Cup, for the ranking, for the 9-ball ranking. If that gets removed, do the big guys stop going? These are the kind of decisions.
Well, the big guys weren't there to begin with, right?
Well, Appleton and Jayson played the final. It's not a bad field. I know Jayson was there for more than just playing. He had his own booth there as well.
Yeah.
But like you said, okay, they weren't all there. It wasn't a huge amount of points, but I mean, it makes a difference. And yeah, again, half-assed work and substandard products are not going to survive anymore in the industry because the bar is getting raised all the time by the big boys. So.
Yeah, I think June Marie made a good comment too. Like they were charging everybody just to be there. So whether she's talking about the pro event, but you had to pay to be into the event regardless if you weren't paying. So like just to show up and like go to the vendors and stuff like that, they charge too. I mean, who knows how much money they're making off of that? And I'm sure there's a ton of expenses. I mean, you got to rent out that facility for 9 days or 8 days or whatever the heck it is. I get that, but there just seems to be so much money that is missing from these events, and where is it going?
Well, my question is, I mean, Nate brings up a good point about junior players being allowed to compete. When a junior player goes to a tournament, they're not even playing for prize money. They're not winning money going and doing it. They're doing it to participate in something and compete and have fun. So if we looked at this as like, hey, people are going out there to try to play pool for money and win money, maybe it's not a very good spot. But if you're looking at it like this is a great extravaganza for, amateur players to come congregate and get a chance to play each other and have a good tournament, and some people do win some money. At some point, if you're going there to have fun and just experience the atmosphere, then it's not a fail. It's only a fail if people are like, hey, I'm looking for tournaments where, I have a good return on my investment and have a chance to, be profitable. So then, of course, so in other words, I feel like it's almost like maybe they're taking an entertainment fee out, and it's more of an entertainment and fun event. And then, so my questions are, I'm curious what they took out of the men's pro division, and to see, because those are the guys that actually are trying to do this for a living. And then at the same time, there is still, even if you could give them credit for an entertainment fee, I mean, there's always a line where somebody can cross where it becomes a little bit excessive. And so, yeah, I get it.
You'd have to look into the books. You'd have to ask the right people the right questions. Have a look into the books. I mean, me personally, I got no problem with organizers making a little bit of a profit. They're putting all the work in. They've got to get paid for the work they're doing. Why would they do it for free? So I don't know how much money is missing, how much is not accounted for, how much is, is other expenses. I would want to get, if I'm going to put all this work into it, I'd want to get something out of it as well. I'd want to get paid. You know, if somebody does a Calcutta, they pay 90% out. Where does the 10% go? I'm taking it myself because I'm putting all the work in to make sure there's a Calcutta. You know, I mean, where is the line between I'm taking 10% for myself, and if it turns out that 10% is 100,000, I'll take the 100,000. If it turns out 10% is 1,000, I take 1,000. I'm putting the work in to make it as big as I can. I'll take a percentage of it. You know. Yeah,
sure. You know, maybe there's perfectly reasonable places for this money to go. I guess I'm just looking at the men's, and from what I was told, they took out $33 from every single one of the $38 from every single one of the entries on a $100 entry fee. You're taking out basically 38% of the prize fund to begin with. It's just crazy.
Is there an industry standard? Like, you know, little Chris just asked, where's the line? And I would say that there's you could talk about some ethical obvious, like if you don't take anything out and you run the event for free, that's obviously generous at a player's event, but you wouldn't expect that.
It should not be done. Yeah.
And if somebody took out 100% and they just lined their pockets and said, you know, you're just showing up here to play for 10 trophies and, you know, whatever, then that would be not very player friendly and maybe not completely ethical. So it's a gray area, and I think the market gets to decide what's appropriate. So this is not Nate trying to put direct pressure on somebody saying you can't do that. Nate's not calling foul directly. He's just trying to communicate what's going on so that the market forces can act accordingly. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, like I'm not even saying the Super Billiards Expo needs to go bye-bye and you shouldn't support it. What I'm saying is
you want more transparency in where the money's going.
I want more transparency out of what's going on. And I also want to see that if this doesn't work out, and this continues to do what, you know, if it is as bad as it looks, then I think that the industry should start weighing it out. I think maybe you should, you know, if you have the opportunity to go to, I don't know, let's say a Predator event in Puerto Rico or the Super Billiards Expo, and like you get to choose one of those two things, maybe you should choose the Predator one. Support the things that you think are doing the best for the industry. And I think, you know, generally speaking, of course, the Predator is partnering with the BCAPL. The BCAPL doesn't exist everywhere, but maybe if it does, you know, the Ohio Open, the Michigan Open, there's the event in Tucson for the Arizona Open. There's all of these different events, even the Las Vegas Open. All of these different events. Maybe go to one of those things instead. And if you want to have the same vendor opportunities, go to the one in Las Vegas. You know, support the events that I think that are giving back to the industry, not just pulling out seemingly tens of thousands of dollars from it and lining your pockets with it. I think at some point in time, we as the people of the industry need to start enforcing these things on our end too. So I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of different reasons why people play tournaments, and that winning prize money is usually not it for most people, because it's just, you know, forget about even if a tournament added 100, put all the money back in. The fact is that you've got travel expenses, hotel, you know, airplane tickets. I mean, it's so expensive right now. In fact, one of the reasons I had a Polish student actually that trained with me, and he told me that in Poland, one of the reasons why the top players are coming out of Poland, he thinks, is that it's because the economy is so good there. He says that you can travel around and play tournaments. It's like basically about this a quarter of the cost relative to what our costs are here in the U.S. And of course, the distances may not be as great either. So it's like he's talking about it like it's just prohibitively expensive to travel and play in the U.S. relative to a lot of Europe. And so he thinks, especially Poland. So my point is that if you're going to a tournament where you're going to be down $1,500 on travel to play in an amateur event with huge fields, you figure you're going to lose money. So you're not really going there. So I think most people that are going there might not even care that there's not much money, you know, left in the prize field, because if they wanted to make the most money, they would stay home, fold that money in half and put it back in their pocket. So I think most people look at this as a vacation, a fun event, and not everyone's coming at it from a place of like, you know, where, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Well, Alex Bosch says there was 13,000 added basically.
For the men's division, it wasn't. And if you notice, I haven't said a single thing about the men's division.
Okay.
I go back from the beginning. I never said anything about the men's division. $13,000 added for the men's division. That seems to be about on par. What I'm saying is it was $5,000 less than what was advertised for the women's professional. And then if you look at the amateurs, bye Jim. Oh wait, bye Rob. Okay, he's back. If you look at that, like if you're going to advertise $5,000 more of payouts for the women, and then there's $5,000 less, and they don't figure it out until so. This is the fun part about that event. They did not post any payouts for that event until like 5 or 6 days into the event. So there are players that are playing to get into the final 16 single elimination who still do not know what they're playing for. That's not transparency, right? The going into the last day of the event, I had a conversation with two of the professional women who were in the final 16. I won't name any names and throw them under the bus, but they were debating on whether or not they wanted to actually. They had a conversation with a bunch of the women that were left, and they were actually debating as to whether or not they were going to all, as a group, forfeit out of the tournament because the $5,000 that was missing. They actually had a conversation with that group of women to make a stand and actually collectively forfeit out of the tournament because of what the organizers were doing. Now, I haven't talked to this person since then. I don't know what happened to make them change their mind. I probably should figure that out. But the women didn't feel good about it. And we're only talking about the pros there. I mean, we're not even talking about all the other amateurs that are just so used to probably being stepped on that they don't care that $30,000 of their entry fee is gone and evaporated. It just seems weird to me that if you're playing in an event with 900 players and your first prize as an amateur isn't up in like the 10,000 range, that's just weird to me. You're looking at 900, we'll just say, if anybody here that was at the event played in the open division and knows how many exact entries there were, please, let me know in the comments. But I was told that the entry fee was $100. Now you're looking at $90,000 in entry fees, and just seems like it seems like if you're playing for $90,000 and first prize isn't like $5,000 or $6,000 for an amateur, that's pretty weird. I guess Demetrius says if you played in a tournament with 900 people, what Tom says about 1,000 entries. I think it was somewhere between 900 and 1,000. But if you played in a field with 900 players, what is the least amount of money you'd want to see in first place before you played in?
Boy, I mean, honestly, my thought process goes immediately to like, what's the final, 13th through 16th and 25th through 32nd. I would think that first place, I would think 5 or 10 grand, but I would really like to see that if you're in the top 32, that you're making a couple, 1,500 or, something like that. So, but okay. Yep. Fair enough. It's, I think it's important that, like what Jim says, I think we should, talk to somebody from that event and get their press release and maybe get them on the pod so that, we have all the information too, because you were there. And so you've heard these conversations, know much more about it. I think Jim and I are coming from a spot where we're just going off what you're saying. And so there's only, of course, people are right. I mean, it is a business. They got to be profitable. There are market forces. There are different reasons for people playing. So I would certainly never get uncomfortable saying that people can't charge money. But if there was something beyond just a reasonable profit going on, then I'd want to know, where it went and hear what they have to say about it.
Yeah, Alex Bausch is a champion. 900. So basically, essentially it's $100,000, and they paid out $68,700. So there's $30,000 that is unaccounted for. Well, I mean, it depends. I shouldn't say unaccounted for. It's not there. So where
$30,000 was redistributed somewhere else within the event, shall we say?
Whether it's to administration fees, greens fees, whatever that is. Alex, so I think this is kind of interesting. The women's professional bracket was pulled down. It's no longer online, so that's an interesting thing too. Again, going back to transparency. The link, all the links that I have for it are gone. So I don't know. Anyways, let's take a look at the actual event itself. Jayson Shaw wins the event over Darren Appleton. Billy Thorpe and Mario He get third, fourth. Ralph Souquet, Fedor Gorst, Joseph Spence, and Oscar Dominguez get 5th through 8th. Warren Kiamko, Thorsten Holman, Met Vergara, Robbie Capito, Kang Lee, Jonathan Pinniger, who is like, that guy's a ride. John Mora and Earl Strickland get 9 through 16. I watched the Jonathan Pinniger match and Mario He. And there was a stretch where like the first or second rack. So Jonathan Pinniger was playing. Their match had to have taken close to 2 hours. Let's see if I can actually figure out what the scheduled matches were. But like their match had to have taken like forever. Actually, here. Mario He, their match lasted 2 hours and 3 minutes, and the score was 11-7. There was a stretch where I watched their match, and Jonathan Pinniger, the ref came up and said something to him, and his response to it was he went back to his seat. It was his break. He racked the balls. His response was to go back and sit in his seat for over 4 minutes. So he sat in his seat for 4 minutes after the referee said something to him, and then got up and broke the balls. You ever seen something like that happen?
You know,
he racked the balls, put the ball where he needed to break it from, and as he was getting ready to break the balls, the ref comes over and says something to him. So he goes back and sits down for 4 minutes.
It's hard to know if he was, you know, so upset that he needed a minute to regroup because he was playing for his tournament and he was totally disturbed. It sounds to me like he was told to speed up the match and wanted to do some type of silent protest, but that's all projection and speculation. I know John. We've played a number of times. I've sweated some matches with him at different tournaments. I've gotten to know him a little bit. He's a good guy to watch matches with, and he's a gracious winner. So when when things don't go his way, it's not always as easy. But yeah.
Crazy. It was wild. Mario, he was actually watching the match next to him and literally was not paying attention to his match at all. Basically, when he came over and like sat next to him, he's like, "Oh, I guess it's my shot," and got up and ran out. It was kind of funny actually. Mario, he is like a saint when it comes to.
He's like the Buddha. Nothing's gonna rattle him.
Yeah. It's essentially what it had to have been. So that was fun. I would like to, I guess, go through the women's division and say what happened there. I know that Kelly Fisher won. Jennifer Beretta got 2nd place. Joanne Mason Parker got 3rd. And now we're getting to the point now where I don't remember exactly what was there because they pulled the women's bracket down. So I remember Allison Fisher and Kelly Fisher had to play each other in a semifinal. So I know Allison Fisher got 5th, 6th, or I guess 5th through 8th. But I would like to know why they pulled that down, I guess. But how about Kelly Fisher? Is anybody going to be able to beat Kelly Fisher? With the Chinese women not being able to go to these events, is anybody in the world even able to be on the same level as Kelly?
Not consistently, no. No. She's a level above everybody else. She's
won everything.
Yeah. She's the best player on the women's tour. Simple as that.
It's fun to watch her play. I know that.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. She's just simply better than everybody else. I mean, and by quite a distance, consistently. Yeah.
Oh, Rob, we can't hear you. Say again.
Oh, Robert's volume's off.
Yeah, we can't hear you, Rob.
I'll just say I was really. Oh, go ahead. I was going to say that I was really impressed. Darren Appleton has been knocking at the door. Believe it or not, he hasn't had the deepest runs because he keeps just getting people running out the sets on him. And he's had some really tough draws and some really tough hill losses at the World Championships and at Derby and things. But how good is he playing? And, that final match, 11-8, Shaw is such a hard guy to win a set off in the finals. I was kind of pulling for Darren because he's been working so hard and playing so well. But I'll tell you what he's gonna have to. Do you feel like, Jim, in the next year he's gonna pop off a big tournament here?
It's so difficult, isn't it, to win one of the big ones? I saw Darren. I spoke to him at the GB9 last week. he's in a good place at the moment mentally. He knows his game is getting there, and he still only feels he's at around about 80%. So he's still got another 20% that he thinks he can add to his game. But he is hitting the ball well, and he's playing well. I think he's ahead of schedule, and I think he always felt he could get back to playing top world-class pool. I think it's happened a little bit quicker than certainly than I expected. I think even than he expected. Do I think he can win another big one? I thoroughly expect him to go very deep at the UK Open. Like you mentioned, it's taking hill matches against people like Filler to knock him out of tournaments, you know. And he's got them. If he's got that extra 20% that he still thinks he's got, he doesn't lose those matches, you know. And then he becomes a proper contender to win these big titles. Again, he's playing consistently well. I'll be honest with you. If I was to pick a Mosconi Cup team right now, he would not be far away from getting in my team. You know, I'm also adding the experience and the Darren Appleton factor to it as well. But if I was to pick a team just now, he'd be right up there, because it is taking world championship performances to knock him out of these tournaments. It's taken Jayson Shaw's, it's taken Joshua Fillers to put him out. He's not getting beat by what you'd call like halfway house players. It's taking the top of the world to knock him out of these tournaments.
And the people that are winning sets are putting up these big runs, whereas you put him in a Mosconi Cup team with a race to 5, you know, a lot of pressure, a lot of composure, experience, some moving, fighting for opportunities, coming with 1 or 2 big shots. I think he might be as good of a sprinter as anybody out there. Yeah.
And his confidence, his confidence is high. He's getting the right results, and it's progressing nicely for him, I think, at the moment. And but again, to win one of these top big tournaments, it's so tough now. So tough. But he'll be there. It's going to take a real good player to beat him at the UK Open on home turf. He's enjoying the matchroom conditions, the tables, you know, the equipment they put out. He really enjoys it in there. It's a kind of game that suits his game, you know. That, you know, you're not smashing the ball, or you've got to be good with your cue ball. You've got to be on the right side of the ball. You've got to have the right angles to play on those tables. They're slick. They're tough. You know, you can't force things around there. And he's one of the best players in the world at doing that and just putting the cue ball in the right position. And he knows how to play it. Confidence is high. Nobody wants to play him. Nobody wants to play Darren Appleton at the moment, I tell you. And he'll be in the World Cup of Pool. I'm pretty sure it'll be him and Jayson, World Cup of Pool. So he's back. He is back. Yeah. Good to see.
I know. I think every event's better with Darren at it.
Oh, yeah. Especially at the bar afterwards. He's one of the few ones that buys around. Not many pool players buy around. Darren does.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, I guess, the events apparently are online. The brackets are online. They pulled them off of Digital Pool, which is weird. They were on Digital Pool the entire time, and then they pulled them off of there. So, I mean, I guess it shows up. The women, I guess I could give the Kelly Fisher first place, Jennifer Beretta second, Joanne Mason Parker third, Taruko Kukalali fourth, Allison Fisher and Caroline Powell got 5th, 6th, Kim Newson and Vero Menard get 7th, 8th. I mean, I guess another good event for the women. 10,000 added to theirs. 13,000, I think, added to the men's, something like that. Those were good. I think that those are pretty good for the men's and the women's as far as added money. I just want to see an explanation as to where the rest of it went for the amateurs.
Well, where does the added money come from?
Well, I'm sure it probably comes from there, but there's
probably from the Open. You can probably explain a big chunk of the 30,000 on the added money for the pros.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'm sure everything just goes into a pool and they decide to pay everything out. So, whatever. At the end of the day, I think, ideally we'd find somebody who does all this stuff for free, and I'm not, that just doesn't work out. You just don't want to end up seeing that somebody's lining their pockets with $100,000 from an event like this and giving back very little. But at the end of the day, if that is the case, that
in any walk of life, something that's free generally does not have the same standard or level of professionalism as something that's been paid for. So if you want the best product and you want things to be nice and shiny, you better pay the people that are making it, polishing it for you, and doing it. Simple as that.
So the last thing we'll talk about today, I guess, is Shane McMinn and Chris Reinhold. They played their race to 100, and I guess the irony is sweet as this: don't call out somebody if you don't think that you're able to beat them. And Shane McMinn called Chris out about a year ago, something like that, right? Where he said, basically in a YouTube video or a Facebook Live video or something like that, basically Shane McMinn said, how is somebody like Chris Reinhold making the Mosconi Cup when he can't even beat me? And he got his opportunity. So 100 to 70, I guess. Any surprises there? Rob, are we able to hear you yet, by the way? We can't hear you. Check your input. Make sure that your input is right. Jim, any surprises there?
Not sure. Didn't see the match. 100 to 70 seems a lot. Seems a big difference for Shane and Chris playing each other. But Chris is more. It just seems more. He just seems more of a complete player. Really, he's got that professionalism about him. He's got good things happening to him in his career recently. We know that these kind of things happen in the pool world, that whether it's jealousy or whether it's people just believing they're better than they are, or believing that somebody else just is not as good as what they really are, and these things happen, people get called out. I'm sure Shane probably believed he could win that match, but he's, I don't know. That Chris won it does not surprise me. That it was a 30 difference. I would not have given him a 30. I wouldn't have given him a 20 rack start. I'd have given him. Somebody said, how many racks does Shane need in order to get there? I'd have said probably about 10 to 15, but not 30. Yeah.
Demetrius?
Yeah, I think that the big thing. Well, first of all, I want to congratulate Chris. That's a heck of a performance. Yeah, so Alex just mentioned he was clearly the better breaker and was able to run more as a result. So I want to share a couple statistics from that match. Chris made a ball successfully and did not foul 77% of the time. So 77 out of 100 breaks, he made a ball and did not foul. McMinn, it was 33 out of 70, which was a 40% success. So 47% instead of 77. The number of break and runs, Chris broke and ran 19 from his break, whereas McMinn ran 4. So what happens now, of course, he had a few more breaks, but there was a decisive, just flat out, like if you just saw that the break stats were that, the skill difference between the players may, I don't want to talk about, who's better by how much, whatever, but let's just pretend, for example, that they had a neutral breaker. Somebody broke for both players. Like, I don't think that type of score margin can happen. I think it's a real closely contested set. I'm not saying Chris can't win. I'm not judging that yet. I'm just saying the break itself kind of denies us forever knowing, because if your opponent, if that just, Chris ran 19 from his break right off the bat, so it's 15 games directly that he broke and ran more than Shane. And on top of that, then you've got all the games where he got control of the table, played a good safety, and then locked it up and ended up winning in 2 innings. Then on top of that, you've got all the pressure that puts on McMinn, knowing that he's winning one game and then grappling for an opportunity, and he's falling further and further behind the match because he can't get the balls to break as well. Mentally, all the pressure that puts on you, it's just it's absolutely insurmountable. And so I look at this like Shane got in the ring without an effective break and was eliminated on just mathematically just by that factor. So now, does that mean that Chris didn't win, outplay him, that he's not a better player? I'm not taking away anything, but the break was completely decisive in this match.
To break the ball 70 times and only run out 4 of them.
That's insane.
But you know what? Everybody gets one, because look at what happened to Chris when he played. There's 2 other players that Chris played races to 100 that he didn't fare so well. It was Tyler Steiner, and then he played Danny Olson. And if you looked at Danny Olson's break and run percentage, Danny had the break absolutely wired, And as a result, Chris didn't, I think, what did he get to 62 or, 72? Like, Chris didn't do any better. Like, when he played Danny Olson, Danny beat him handily. And so people, obviously, Danny, if they play nine ball, tournament wise, it's not going to be that type of margin, but it was the same story, just reversed. So my opinion is Chris had that happen to him twice, not just once, but twice, Tyler and Danny. And I think that motivated him and it forced him to develop his 10 ball break. Meanwhile, Shane McMahon, he's playing mostly bar pool, playing guys that he could beat, where the break shot, playing big table 10 ball, I don't think he's gone through that. So if that happens to Shane McMahon a couple times, and I think Danny Olson beat Shane McMahon a couple, 2 out of 3 sets to 25 or something like that. Anyway, now that that's happened to Shane a couple times, maybe he gets to work on his big table 10 ball break. Or maybe he decides it's not his game. But I think that he would have to do, in order for him to be competitive, he would have to do what Chris did. If you have two similar skilled players that are, the funny part is when you watch like the 800s matchup playing 10 ball, all of their breaks are pretty well developed. And so the breaking gaps aren't as big. But even there, you see it when Dennis plays Shane. It's too much. It's too much. You can't go to war without an effective break when you're at that level.
What I don't understand is if you're going to turn around and say how can this guy possibly be considered good enough to get on a Mosconi Cup team, and you want to lay down a challenge, why are you playing 10 ball? Why doesn't he turn around and say let's play 9 ball? That's the Mosconi Cup game. You're challenging somebody based on the fact that they're in the Mosconi Cup team, but you go and turn around and say, let's play one pocket.
I suspect, and I don't know that this is true, but I suspect that Shane thinks he can beat him in anything. And Chris has been working on his 10 ball break a ton the past year, and it's showing up right here.
He's been working on his game. You see how he scrutinizes himself on Facebook after every tournament, and he's learning all the time, and he's looking back on his performances. He's looking back on where it went wrong, what he can improve on, the things that went good. He's really he's going through a schooling process at the moment, and you can see he's taking it very, very seriously, and he's growing from it. I mean, Chris is a good player. Let's not turn and say that this is some kind of idiot who is not deserving to be on in the running for Mosconi Cup. I mean, he's played in it a couple of times. He's not been the worst player yet in the team. To be honest, has he had a Mosconi Cup where he was the worst player in the team? No,
he's the second best player on the team, and then last year he was a 4-ball away from. A 4-ball with Jeremy away from basically being the hero of the team. Yeah. I mean, of course, Sky played the best, but
any players out there in America that want to mouth off saying this person shouldn't be in the Mosconi, do it then. Get off your ass, go and play the tournaments and qualify. Show that you're better. Don't just mouth it. And what does it prove if you beat the guy who raced 110 ball? Do you then turn around to Jeremy Jones and say, I guess I'm in the team next year? No, you're not. Bugger off. Go and win some tournaments. Play some 9-ball.
This is
it's ridiculous.
This is the stuff that drives me nuts about this. Is like the U.S. players, especially players like Shane McMahon, have been complaining for years and years and years about how there's no transparency and all of it is politics and all of it, they're just as good as the players who get on there. But now the first year that we actually have transparency, everybody knows. Look at who is leading the U.S. right now. You have players like Nick DeLeon. You have players like Billy Thorpe, the players that just show up to all these events no matter what. And, Billy's got a ban. Well, maybe he's got a ban. We still don't even know if he does or not. But the point is, like, all these players, it's the same players that show up every single time. Now that there actually is some transparency and you know exactly how to make the Mosconi Cup team, you're still nowhere to be found. The players who have always been there and the players that are always traveling and, working on their game are the players that are still there doing it. So, really, it's just a bunch of, excuse making. Like at the end of the day, you just want a reason why you can't make a team that you refuse to work to get onto.
Well, I think one thing that happens is a lot of these, semi-pro type players, they had a lot of hopes and dreams that if they got competitive at pool, great things would magically come together for them. And they felt so disappointed for so long, and that they've just developed a cynical and jaded attitude towards pool to where when opportunities do knock, they've been telling themselves for so many years now that there's just no reward and there's no opportunity and nothing good ever happens and this is terrible and it's, blah, blah, blah. That when opportunities present themselves, they're just not even in a mindset to where that they just don't have that positive mental outlook where they're seeing opportunities and seizing them. They're just kind of like, they're very like, I know a lot of players that kind of fall in that category where they're just kind of disgruntled and stealing from regional bar table tournaments and just kind of upset because, how terrible is pool in America, and they're just kind of chip on their shoulder. And and so that just doesn't really work. You can do that. You can live how you want to live, but it's not a fun way to live, and it doesn't lend itself to seizing opportunities. I'll just say that.
Agreed. Agreed. Rob, do we have you yet? No, we still don't have you. We'll have to figure it out later. I'm not sure what the heck's going on for you, buddy. So I guess that's kind of all I wanted to talk about today anyway. So last week we took the week off because I was at the Super Billiards Expo and I didn't have enough time to be able to sit down and do a podcast. So I apologize to everybody that we took a week off, but that's the first week I think we've taken off in probably well over a year. So plenty still of content. We're hoping to get Shane Van Boning on still, so that should be coming up in your news feed soon. And yeah, Shane's words: "I would swim through a river of piss to play Chris."
Do you think that there's going to be a rematch? Because I would be surprised if I was Shane and I felt that I was a better player and that I was basically just unprepared, my break didn't work. I don't think that if I saw something in Chris where I was like, man, was I wrong? He plays way better than me in every part of the game. I didn't smell any weakness. I don't know if I were to run it again. I don't know how I would go about putting together a winning game plan. That's one thing. But if you felt like, no, the guy had a break working that I couldn't get working and I didn't even get a chance. And I feel that if I could neutralize the breaking edge, I could outplay him in every other part of the game and dominate. If that's the way Shane feels, I smell a rematch.
It would have to be 9-ball.
Maybe.
Who knows? Honestly, this didn't do anything for me. Like I was at the Super Billiards Expo anyways, but like this matchup didn't interest me at all. I look at this thing as just basically like sour grapes pissing competition where Shane called out Chris and Chris showed up and played, and like the idea is, even if Shane McMahon wins, what then? What? There's no long-term ramifications because he's not going to make the team because he's not going to show up to any events.
No, but I like rooting for people. You're right. McMahon's not out there competing like Chris is, and that's why I think this is an interesting story, though, is because I really believe that when the players are, like Jim says, when the players are getting in the ring, showing up at the tournaments, playing top players, working on their game, putting in the day-to-day effort. What I love about pool is it's not just a matter of like, oh, I'm tougher than you. Tyler kind of did it to Chris when they first played. And that was one of the things I said motivated Chris. It's like Tyler was the guy where Chris was the guy that was like, I'm just a better player than you, Tyler. I'll always beat you. But then Tyler put in consistent effort, work, showing up at tournaments, working on his game, working on his break, playing top players. And then Tyler showed up and took Chris down. Now here's a spot where Chris did the same thing where, Shane was just like, oh yeah, I'll always be better than you. And Chris is like, well, 3, 4, 5 years of day-to-day work, playing top players, putting in work on different parts of his game, all that. And then to see that, I like that story of a guy who's up against kind of like a little bit of a bully in some ways, just putting one foot in front of the other, developing themselves in time. It's kind of like, the Karate Kid, you develop your skills, you get in the ring, and this person, it seems like they were bigger and stronger all your life, but all of a sudden you put in the work and you learn your techniques and you face your fears, and next thing you know, you can triumph. I think it's a good story.
I think I like that. I like that as well if Shane McMahon was relevant. And I don't mean that how can you not say you mean it in a non-disrespectful way? But at the end of the day, like Shane McMahon isn't playing in anything. When was the last time you remember seeing Shane playing anything that was real?
At the end of the day, Chris would be well within his rights. If Shane was to say, I want another crack, Chris would be well within his rights to try and say, it doesn't benefit me anyway. It's not, you're not in my plans. I have a ladder I'm going up. I have a ladder that I'm going up. We talked about it earlier, picking players that are just a little bit stronger than you to get your game going. And you said he's not relevant. In my opinion, for Chris, he probably isn't relevant because he wouldn't be it wouldn't be somebody that Chris, in my opinion, that Chris should have his radar as a target. Man, this is somebody it's going to benefit my game playing against him. It's not going to benefit your game playing against him. You want to be going back to Tyler and saying, Tyler,
that's where I was going to go. So he didn't know. Chris couldn't. He didn't know it was going to go that way until he did it. And if Shane has been a tough player, maybe they have some history. If Shane has always been maybe Chris has been working for the opportunity to come back and do to Shane what he did. Maybe that was meaningful to him. And I think that the players, maybe he rematches Danny Olson, maybe he rematches Tyler, maybe he goes after Jesus Atencio. You know what I mean? Like, these are the players I think he's going to do next. But I think that was meaningful to him. And just because Shane hasn't been competing in major events, maybe he's not relevant in our conversations of what we normally focus on. But I think they go back to juniors together, man. They've known each other, for a while. They've got history. And I think that in his personal journey, I think that it was meaningful that he drew a line in the sand and said, okay, you want to play, here you go. And I'm proud of him, man. I'm really proud of him.
Yeah, I don't think any of those players want anything to do with Jesus at this point.
Nope. But these money matches are more than just money.
Yeah.
These players have to be picking the correct opponents that they can get the most out of it. Win or lose, their game gets the most out of it. They get the most benefit in the long run, And
Sure.
I don't think a match against Shane. I think Tyler. That's a match that would benefit him. Would benefit Tyler as well, because Tyler's kind of, his levels dropped a little bit. Maybe he needs that boost again. But I think these are two players that they'll go back and forward on each other, I think, for a period of time. I expect one of them at a certain stage to make to really peak and to jump up the rankings, to jump up into that 790 towards the 800 kind of Fargo. And they can be bouncing off each other. You ain't going to get that playing against a Shane McMahon. Sorry, Shane, if you're watching. I just, you need to play more, in my opinion. You need to get yourself into more tournaments. You need to make yourself a relevant member of the American pool.
I have to assume he just isn't interested in doing that.
And there's a lot of players that like that, and that's fair enough. If you're not interested in that, that's fair enough. You do your own thing, but you've got no right to then challenge somebody based on the fact that they're getting selected from Moscone if you're not prepared to put the work in order to get selected as well. You're not going to get in that team by beating them in a big set of 10 ball. So what's the point in challenging somebody based on their Moscone status?
No, 2020, I guess, was the perfect example of that, because I think Tyler beat the brakes off of Chris that year, and Chris made the team anyways. Again,
because it's irrelevant to Moscone Cup. It's a race to 100 instead of a race to 5. It's 10 ball instead of 9 ball. It's got no effect whatsoever. As a team captain, you don't look at that and say, "No, I'm going to pick Tyler." No, you don't. I mean,
you shouldn't anyway. So, I mean, if you have two players that are exactly even, maybe. But
the other thing that I find interesting is, like, I don't know, it's just a difference in style. So, I mean, this has been a little, maybe I feel like we're being a little hard on Shane, because to Jim's point, he's not obligated to go out and play. He can do his thing. And, pool's a pretty tough endeavor to try to, there's a lot of reasons not to go out and compete when you're not at the highest level. So, but what I will say is I find it interesting, his attitude, where he was kind of like, swim across a river of piss or whatever, like, very, very, very confident. And I don't know, I'm curious to hear your thoughts. When I play a player, I've played some sets before. I don't get in the ring if I'm not confident to a point. Like, if I'm not confident that if I don't have a game plan, or if I can't see a possible way that if I go there and deliver my game and put together and follow a good game plan, that there are some roads that lead to victory. Like, I'm not going to get into a match if I've got zero possibility of winning. But every time I get into a match, I'm very I recognize how tough it's going to be. I think the outcome is in doubt. It's never over till it's over. I might be cautiously optimistic. I might even be confident that I'm going to deliver a good fight and that I have winning chances. But I never feel like, oh, this is going to be easy. I mean, do you guys ever feel that way? It's an interesting. Do you think, like, when top players, when Shane plays Dennis, do you think he thinks he's stealing, or do you think he goes in like, is that a weird attitude to have, I guess, getting into a match? I don't know.
It depends how much of it is actual real and how much of it is bravado.
Fair
how
enough.
much is it what I want my opponent to hear, and how much is it what I really believe?
That's fair.
And that's all part of the mind games. Is all part of a one-on-one money match, And but I'm quite sure. I mean, I'm sure he has a different perspective now as to where Chris stands as far as the quality of player he is.
I'm sure part of it was just jealousy too.
Nate says they don't play 10 ball anymore. That just isn't going to happen. They're not going to play.
I think at some point in time it's just jealousy too. Like,
Jealousy. Yep.
Shane,
It's just-
Shane sees Chris getting all these accolades and all this, this attention and bravado from playing in the Mosconi Cup, and Shane doesn't think he loses to him. And even if he does think he's close with him, I think a lot of it is just jealousy. Like, he wants that attention. He wants to be on that same platform that Chris is at, because he doesn't think, even if he is better player, that it's by enough to justify all that attention. And I'm sure part of the point of calling him out was just all the sour grapes, that he thinks that he should get some of that attention too. But Chris plays every event, and Shane plays regional bar table events.
There is. I guess I can kind of understand it a little bit. I mean, I can't understand. It's not acceptable behavior to be just jealous and calling people out and that kind of stuff. But Chris has got himself into the Team America is in a stage where they've picked somebody who's like a 745 Fargo to play in the Mosconi Cup. Demetrius is round about that level. According to Fargo, Demetrius is playing that kind of level as well. There's a lot of players who probably look to that and think, hold on a second. But I'm like 750, 760, 740, 730. Why is it Chris? Why is he the one who is getting in the team? They've had to go down to the 740s to find a player to get in the team. Why have they picked him? Why haven't they picked me? That's where the jealousy comes in, but that's also where you're not understanding what it means to be a professional pool player, what it means to make that little bit of difference when you're getting selected to be on television in in the biggest show and tournament of the entire year, and to represent your country. Chris does the right things. He's been rewarded, himself and Tyler to a certain extent have been rewarded for their professionalism, for being proper pool players and not people going on the internet and saying stuff like, I would swim through a stream of piss in order to play against it. You don't hear that from a proper professional athlete on openly saying that on social media for the whole world to read. That kind of attitude is maybe why you are not the guy that's getting picked for the Mosconi Cup when they've gone down and look at the 740 Fargos.
Yeah, and what I really love about this, and I kind of touched on with that story already, is that it's not about who you are, it's about what you do. And that there's plenty of players that may not have, maybe when they were 16, 17, 18, 20, maybe not everybody was like, oh, this guy's the next Josh Spiller. But in the same way, if somebody if somebody joins the wrestling team and they're not the varsity team and they're struggling to get in, but if they go to the weight room every day and work out and they run every morning and they wrestle every event and they study and they practice, what that person's trajectory is going to be totally different than some big strong guy that just kind of like dominated against his peers because he was a couple inches taller. It's tortoise and the hare story all over. And what I really, really admire about Chris and Tyler is like, it's not their level of play. I mean, there's better players, but it's what they've done is that they've given their all. They're going all in. They're trying really hard. And that's what gets recognized and rewarded. And, that's why when there may be a number of 750 players in the U.S., but there's not a number of players doing what Tyler and Chris are doing, both showing up and playing, putting in the practice, but also being professional in the sense of being ambassadors of the sport. And so when you see people that are consistently doing that, it's like that's the price of admission. And it's not politics. It's business. I mean, these guys are bringing the sport. They've got, if Chris Reinhold has 10,000 Facebook followers that are vividly rooting him on to the Mosconi Cup, that's a bottom line. It's making a positive impact to the matchroom success. And it's like, you can't diminish that and say, well, you're just there, playing make-believe fool and trying to PR. It's like, yeah, Chris wouldn't have those followers if he wasn't putting in the work, playing the events and getting good results.
And it means that the next generation coming through, when they look and see what do I need to do to give myself the best opportunities, they see that a Tyler and a Chris have been rewarded for what they've done, and that becomes their role models, not other people who perhaps are not the best role models, shall we say.
Yes.
Yep. I agree. So I guess that's probably a good place to wrap up this discussion today, unless there's anything either of you have. Jim, how was your GB9?
How about getting yourself one of these people?
Yeah, those are pretty nice.
Pretty sweet.
Yeah, we got a bunch of them still, actually.
Go on the podcast, on the podcast page and get yourself some of the, you got the shirts as well.
Yeah, I'll have to make a post up later on today with what I have left. I have a little bit of inventory of those left. But if you want yourself a custom one like Jim got, just reach out to the podcast page and we'll get you hooked up with one. They're pretty cheap, actually, $70 for a fully customized jersey. Pretty fun.
And mine arrived 4 hours after I left for the GB9, so I didn't get to. But I will be wearing them all at the UK Open. Different one every match.
Not to mention, I think it supports the show and it supports Nate. I mean, Nate is representing, sportswear. I'm sorry, on board. I'm going to mix it up now. I'm sorry. On board sportswear. And so let's, help Nate be incredibly successful in his new career. It's okay to give a little something back, and, he's not, So, all right. Thanks, Nate.
Where does it say on board? Yeah, it says on board somewhere. Yeah. They're good quality though. Really nice.
Yeah, they are. All right. Sounds good. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and until next week.
Bye-bye.